I'm in Southeast Ohio at the Habitat Oasis project, and thought I'd do a quick video on insurance for your tractor. I see people ask all the time on Facebook about how people are insuring, what they're paying for insurance, and what I've found over time is that it's a more complex topic than you might think. Probably my number one tip is do not assume you are covered in all scenarios. Talk to your agent, make sure you understand your insurance. So I'm going to talk through a number of options for insurance. So I'm going to talk about insurance through John Deere. I'm going to talk about insurance through your homeowner's policy, having a separate policy, and there's a couple different options there that specifically addresses the tractor, the option of the Farm Bureau, and looking at business insurance so that you're covered for commercial use. So we're going to talk about all of those things today. So the first thing I want to hit on is talking about insurance through John Deere. When you purchase through John Deere, I bought this 1025R with 0% financing for 60 months. As part of my payment, I agreed to and they built in insurance on the tractor. I think it ran about $3 to $4 per month on my bill, and I really didn't know what the insurance covered when I agreed to it, only that I was insured. What I later found out was that it is all-inclusive insurance. It covers absolutely everything. And the reason John Deere sells that insurance, and they actually are offering it through a third party, the reason they do that is they want to protect their asset until you have it paid off. And the way that insurance works is the day it's paid off, the insurance goes away. So I'll hear guys say, I got the 60 months 0% interest, but I plan on paying it off sooner than that. You may want to think about that. Does it make sense from an insurance standpoint? Because when you pay it off, you now have to figure out how you're going to insure it yourself. But I had that insurance through John Deere. I think it's a great deal, and it covered absolutely everything. When I called and asked them, they said it's completely covered, and it is for the value of the tractor. So it's not just coverage for your outstanding balance on the loan. So let's say you had a tractor and some equipment and it was insured for $20,000. You've paid down your loan over 2 years, you now owe $12,000. The tractor's worth $18,000. The insurance would cover the $18,000. It's not just to cover the loan. So great insurance that to me is well worth the cost of a couple bucks a month. I haven't been able to find anything to replace that insurance that cheaply. So I highly recommend that if you're financing through John Deere, let them throw that insurance on there, because I think it's a good deal. And actually, when I got the tractor, I assumed I didn't need insurance because it would be insured through my homeowner's policy. And a lot of people say that, oh, it's covered under your homeowners. And because it has the mid-mount mower, that made perfect sense to me that this is a tractor I use around the house. I use it for maintaining the yard, and I actually use it at my cabin. So therefore, it should fall under my homeowner's insurance. And when I checked with my agent, that was the case. It was covered under my homeowner's insurance. But what I didn't recognize was there's some gaps in that insurance. So my cabin is about 3 hours from my house. And I assumed that while I kept it at the property, it was covered by my insurance there. When I had it at home, it would be covered by my insurance at my home. And I was correct. I assumed when I towed it on a trailer from one place to the other, either my homeowner's or my automotive insurance would cover it. And what I found out was that was not the case. It was not covered during transport. So if I had caused an accident or had an accident that was my fault, the tractor would not have been covered. Had somebody hit me and damaged the trailer and the tractor and my car, their insurance would be responsible for all of it. But my insurance did not cover this tractor during transport. So that was a big eye-opener for me and made me think that, hey, I've got a $15,000 tractor on the back of this trailer with no insurance, and all it would take is some kind of failure on my trailer or an accident, and I would be out the value of this tractor. So that was a big deal to me. That's what caused me to call John Deere and ask about their coverage. Found out that it was fully covered even when I trailered it. So So that was an interesting thing. The other thing about homeowners insurance, talk to your agent and make sure you understand what's covered and what's not covered. And again, make sure you go through the scenarios. Don't assume. I've heard, and I don't know this for a fact, that once you get above 30 horsepower on a tractor, it's no longer considered a lawn tractor and it's not covered by your homeowner. So I don't know that for a fact. I don't know that that is across the board with all insurance companies, but that's something to check on. Make sure, I've got a 2032, I've got a 2038, I've got a 1025. Make sure that you know what's covered. If it's covered under homeowners, make sure they know what model you've got and that it's fully covered. If they send you an email, save that email so that you've got it if you ever need it. The other questions you should think about are, is it covered if I go over to the neighbor's house and I till their garden? What if I've got a backhoe and I go over and I'm helping them replace a water line and I cause damage to my tractor or damage to their property? Am I covered? Even if I'm not, and it may vary, if they're paying me for the work versus if they're not paying me. And I don't know all the answers to that, but those are questions to ask if you're going to be doing work for somebody else. What if I loan my tractor to the neighbor and let them do it? Am I covered? Would their homeowner's policy cover it at that point? I don't know those answers, but those are questions that you should ask. Don't assume your homeowner's policy covers it. One thing I've heard consistently is if you are charging for work, so if you're out clearing driveways, if you are digging holes, running a post hole digger, brush hogging, if you are charging, I've heard that your homeowner's insurance will not cover that because that's a commercial use of the tractor and it's going to fall under different rules. So make sure you ask those questions. So homeowner's policy, that's one way of covering it. The other, and I did this with the 4052R, so this was being covered under my homeowner's policy and under John Deere's policy. So I had double coverage on it. I just paid it off in April. The day that coverage ended, or the payments ended, that coverage from John Deere went away, and I rolled it over to my a policy with State Farm. So my homeowners covers it when it's at home, but I was concerned about the coverage if I would transport it, and I do transport it. So I got a different policy for it. It's the same type of policy I have for the 4052R, which is parked right over here. And that's a personal articles policy. And basically what you do with a personal articles policy, it's no different than if you say you've got a gun collection, you've got a jewelry connection, you've got an art collection, and you want to insure the value of those items, you get a personal articles policy. For my 1025, for my 4052R, I gave them a dollar figure. I said, I think the tractor and the attachments to go with it are worth this much. It's about $35,000 that I put on it as value. So I am insured for pretty much anything that happens. If it gets stolen, if there'd be a fire that damaged it, if it's basically any kind of accidental damage. It doesn't cover wear and tear. I was just reading the policy before doing this. One of the things I found is it doesn't cover vermin and insects. So that would tell me if I had a rat get in there and chew up the wires, that may not be covered. But it does cover all major things. If I've got it on the trailer and I'd have an accident, it's covered on the trailer. So that was important to me. $35,000, I pay $525 a year for that on the 4052R. I pay another, I think it's about $35 or $40 a month to have the 1025R covered on a personal articles policy. And I think it's covered for around $18,000. I'd have to look at the policy. But personal article policy, that's another option. Another option, and I haven't checked to see if this is available on the tractors because my agent recommended that I'd use the personal articles policy, but you may be able to insure this just like you do your automobile. That's how I've got my Polaris side-by-side insured. So it has collision, liability, comprehensive, medical. So if I'm using that and I run into somebody's car, both are covered. If somebody runs into me and they don't have insurance, I'm covered. If we have an accident and someone that's involved in that accident has medical expenses, we're covered. So having it insured like a vehicle, I don't know for certain that the tractor can be insured that way, but it's worth talking to your agent about and see, is that something that you can have. Other item is a commercial insurance policy. If you're going to be using your tractor for commercial business and you're getting paid, you're going to probably need a commercial policy. Talk to your agent about that. It's going to cover a lot of different things that might not be covered under a standard policy. Make sure they know what kind of work you're doing. I've heard some people say that if they're brush hogging, it's really relatively inexpensive. But as soon as they put the backhoe on and they start digging, and they can dig up power lines, water lines, things along those lines, the insurance goes up. So think about a commercial insurance policy if you're going to be doing commercial work. And chances are you've got other equipment that you're going to want to insure as well. So commercial insurance policy. I've not looked into this, but I know that you can get insurance through the Farm Bureau. I've got kind of a unique situation in that I've got my home in Central Ohio. I've got my cabin in West Virginia. So I've got homeowners policy on each of those, as I mentioned. But I also have property between the two where I don't have a cabin or a barn or anything, and I store my equipment at Josh's place. So fortunately, my homeowner's policy does cover my equipment as well as the personal articles policy covers it when it's parked here at Josh's and while I'm using it on our property here. So that was good. But I just recently purchased a property across the road, and I will have my own barn. The tractors will be stored on my property in my barn, and what I'm going to look into there, because I'm looking at how do I roll that up and save money on my insurance. I'm going to look at a policy through the Farm Bureau, see if there's some breaks I can get there. They're used to, they specialize in insuring farm equipment, so I'm going to talk to them to see, what are my options there? Is it cheaper than what I'm getting through State Farm, or do I already have the best policy and the one that makes the most sense? So kind of a unique situation. There's a lot of variables you want to make sure you understand. One other item is, as you look at your policies, a couple things you can do to make things cheaper. One is you can raise your deductible. So if your deductible is $250 versus $1,000, you're going to pay more for that $250 deductible. Basically, by accepting that $250 deductible or taking that $1,000 deductible, you're taking some of the risk off the insurance company. That first $1,000, they can give you a better rate. The other is to adjust coverages. So in the event, like in the example of my personal articles policy, I insured the tractor for the full value. What I could do, because I've got multiple attachments and the chances of all of them being damaged at the same time. Now, if they're in the barn and there's a fire and they all catch fire, they would all be at risk. But could somebody come in and steal everything? It'd be pretty hard from a theft standpoint for them to do that. But you can reduce your coverage. Instead of insuring that thing for $35,000, what if I said I'm willing to accept $10,000 worth of liability, and I only want to insure it for $25,000? That insurance comes down. On a policy like your automotive, if you reduce your coverages, instead of saying I want $100,000 per accident, I only want $50,000 per accident. Whatever those limits are. By tweaking those limits, you can bring your insurance down. And it really comes down to how much risk you're willing to accept. I had, again, a scenario at the cabin. I didn't have a place to store things, so I was storing my ATVs and side-by-sides in a friend's shed. Well, we had a flood. My side-by-side was in their garage. I had full coverage on it. It got floated by the flood. Everything was full of water. Insurance paid to have that thing cleaned up and restored. The ones in the barn, one of them was fully insured, or in the shed, one was fully insured, and our shed actually floated, fell apart, and everything went down the river. I found my 3 ATVs. I had them chained together to make it harder to steal them. Well, the chains were still on them, and they were wrapped around a tree, and it just gotten beat to heck.
I'm having trouble hearing.
But the situation I had there, one was fully insured. 2 of them were fully insured. So I got insurance payouts on those. The third, I had decided, I don't see how we're going to do that much damage to it. It was a $3,000 kids side-by-side, and I'm not sure the kids would have ever done that much damage to it. The flood destroyed it, and it was a total loss for me. So it was $3,000, not the end of the world. I wasn't happy about it, but I accepted that risk. So you can definitely, look at what risk am I willing to accept, what risk do I not want to accept, and you obviously insure for the difference between the two. So I hope that was helpful to give you a quick overview of some different insurance options. I'm not an agent. I'm just a guy I've got different types of insurance on different things, and I highly recommend that you have these conversations with your agent. You can get some information off of Facebook. You'll get various opinions. A lot of it's based on fact. Some of it's based on stories people have had. But talk to your agent. Talk through how you use it. Talk through all the scenarios. Don't assume you're covered. And look at what coverage makes the most sense to you. So I hope this was helpful. If so, please hit like. Share this video. Share our channel with others. And subscribe. We do a lot of stuff outdoors. And if you enjoyed this, check out some of the other things on the channel. Thanks. Have a great day. And remember, outdoors is always in season.